Now, a couple of weeks ago, the Anti-Vivisection Society organised protest marches in Palmerston North and in Levin against the passing of a psychoactive substances bill. I've got with me Rhonda Finlay from the New Zealand Anti-Vivisection Society. What is this all about? I mean, psychoactive substances have created a furore because they're legal highs and they don't want them in dairies and they don't want them sold to our young people, or anybody for that matter. What's it got to do with the Anti-Vivisection Society?
Well, animals will be tested on, and there's nothing to stop animals being tested on.
So the provision in the bill is that if a manufacturer or a supplier wants to sell the legal highs, they have to prove that they're safe for humans by testing them on other animals.
The problem is that the government didn't receive any of our submissions, so they didn't actually look at anything that was against animal testing. The New Zealand Anti-Vivisection Society presented a 50-page submission, which I have here. Now, about 25 pages of this come from overseas toxicology experts, and they give a range of tests that could be used for all the types of testing that have been recommended to the Ministry of Health. But the government did not even look at this. They returned all the submissions because they said they were outside of the scope of the bill.
Outside the scope of the bill?
Yes.
So they were regarding the testing regime as something separate entirely?
They were, but then they decided it was within the scope of the bill after they refused the submissions, and they put forth a new amendment, which Todd McClay put forth, which said that animals would be tested on, which basically ensured that animals would be tested on, but it also did have a clause saying that alternative tests would be used if possible.
So what have you got against testing on animals?
Well, apart from the ethical considerations, they have been shown to be very dangerous and risky for humans. I mean, I started myself a diploma in herbal medicine, and even from the herb side of things, you can't extrapolate information gained from using animals to humans. And I'm thinking of herbs. You wouldn't use the same herbs that you would for animals as you'd use for human conditions, and it's quite dangerous.
And yet we test a lot. You hear lab rats, for instance. Lab rats are kind of ubiquitous testing thingies, aren't they? I mean, they've been used for decades.
They have been used for decades, but very recently, in February this year, there was a new publication that looked at a big major test that had been conducted on animals, and the reason this test was conducted was they'd seen that 150 tests that had been conducted on mice failed when it came to the clinical trial stage on humans. A lot of scientists and doctors have been saying for years that these tests are irrelevant, and not only are irrelevant, they can cause harm when applied to the human body. If you look here, this is what the government was proposing. This is the scientists of the government sent this to the MOH, that's the Ministry of Health, and these are the type of the tests they were recommending. We're looking at acute toxicity tests, and as you can see, it's rat, and then a non-rodent, which will mean dog.
Yes.
And I mean, this is the picture of dogs inhaling substances, and this is what will be happening unless we can get a total ban on animals being used. And that is the dogs. The beagle dogs are used because they're very gentle. And this one here is rats, and this is called the solenoid puffing device, and the rats are put in there. And as you can see from the recommendations to the Ministry of Health, these are the type of tests that will be used, and these will be used for the inhaling the drugs that have to be inhaled, so the type of K2 types drugs.
But the dogs and the rats and the mice actually can't tell people what's happening to them when they're inhaling or forced to inhale these substances.
No, and one of I saw in one of these when I was reading through it that they have put the psychiatric reaction, so I really don't know how they're going to monitor that.
There are people who have put their hands up, of course, to act as guinea pigs in animals' stead. Not that they're thinking of the animals, but there are people who say, well, you can test the drugs on us.
Yes, and at the human clinical trial stage, they could be used for that. But prior to that, there are a lot of tests that could be used, toxicology tests, in every field here, whether it is acute toxicity tests, whether it is genotoxicity tests or toxicokinetic tests, which look at the drug as it goes throughout the body. There are tests that don't require animals, and they are far more cutting edge and modern. Like, for example, computer technology has really taken over. A computer can tell a substance, it can go down the generations of a molecule, hundreds and hundreds throughout the molecule, and it can quickly analyse it in minutes and give far more precise data, up-to-date data, whereas an animal, well, that will take months, and the data will be not very valid for humans.
So hence the protest that the Anti-Vivisection Society mounted in Palmerston North around the square, and also in Levin, was saying that, hey, leave the animals alone. It's irrelevant. What you're doing to them is not right, and it's not even good science.
That's right. And also the government has totally ignored everything. It has totally ignored the polls. Now, the recent poll, which was on 7 Sharp, the Facebook poll, showed that 98% of the people in New Zealand were against testing on animals for these party pills and the psychoactive substances.
And that was one of the signs, of course, that was held up at the protest in the square in Palmerston North. Why should I die for a legal high?
Yes, and why should animals suffer? I mean, the whole ethical issue is just preposterous, really, when you think about it, that young people are wanting to take these drugs, which are actually causing havoc in the community, and now we are thinking of testing them on animals. You have to question where we are as a society that we are even thinking about this.
Now, that poll result should come really as no surprise, because New Zealanders, as a people, have one of the highest pet ownership ratios in the world.
Yes, the cat and dog ownership ratio is very high, and a lot of people are very loving towards their dogs, especially, and you saw a lot of people out there marching, mainly because of dogs being used, beagles being used. But I think any animal being used is equally as bad, whether it be rodents, which I have a rodent phobia, but I still don't think they should be used. And this is the picture of, like I showed you before, of the rodents. They can't even move in that picture, and it's certainly unethical.
You must have been very pleased, though, with the turnout in Palmerston North with the particular protest. Over 200 people and nearly 90 dogs. Yes,
and we only had a very quick amount of time to get that protest together too.
So what's next? You lost the round at Parliament, but the battle's not finished yet.
No. Well, Mojo Mathers of the Green Party, she has now put forth a private members bill, so we have to see what can happen from that.
Now, this is a private members bill, which means it's a lottery, really, whether it even gets pulled out of the ballot. What are your suggestions to animal lovers who don't want the psychoactive substances bill and its animal testing clause to go any further?
Put pressure on the government of the day especially, to write letters, emails, and even better, go and see them personally. And Nathan Guy, he's the MP for the Horowhenua area. I would suggest to go to see Nathan Guy.
Do you think this could be an election issue in 2014?
I definitely think this is an election issue, given the large amount of people that are against this. I think that the government needs to look at this, and I think all parties need to look at it.